2025 Medicine Hat Police Commission meeting. I'll open this evening with a land acknowledgement. The Medicine Hat Police Service and its Police Commission honor and acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 7 and Treaty 4 territory, the traditional lands of the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina, as well as the Cree, Sioux, and Saulteaux bands of the Ojibwe peoples. We also acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of Métis Nation. At this time, I would ask any commissioners present to declare any conflict of interest related to the agenda as presented. Seeing none, thank you. Move on to approval of the agenda as circulated. A motion to accept. Commissioner Thorson, seconded by Commissioner Keane. Thank you. Any opposed? Abstained? That motion is approved. The minutes from the last meeting were circulated. Can we have a motion to accept or add amendments? Commissioner, sir?
Sorry, I'd like to make the motion to amend that. There's a correction on the motion. They called me the counselor, and I should be the commissioner.
Thank you. I think we'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Thank you. Councillor Dumanowski seconds. Any other revisions, amendments? Seeing none, any abstained? Opposed? Minutes are approved as amended. We have a presentation from the Police Service. Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to introduce Staff Sergeant Chad Holt and Constable Austin Weisgerber, and they'll do a presentation for you about our use of force statistics for last year. Take it away, fellas.
Thanks, Chief. Hello, everybody. Few familiar faces from last year, so this year's going to look very similar to that of last year. Sergeant Klein unfortunately wasn't able to make it, so you're stuck listening to me all night, but I'll try to make it brief. Today's just going to be going over kind of a general overview of our 2024 use of force statistics. I'm a member of our control tactics unit that is kind of in charge with analyzing and documenting various different categories within our use of force statting that we do in service-wise. So essentially what this is going to look like is just a brief breakdown of kind of what that looked like in 2024, some trends, some changes, and differences from 2023. So we could see naturally over the course of our duties, whether it be through patrol units, our downtown patrol unit, or just any essentially operational services, we're going to have several officer interactions, like as a whole in general about 100,000 interactions with folks over the years. So when we average kind of those 100,000 interactions, about 116 on average result in some type of use of force. So when you do the percentage-wise, that's obviously we have quite a few. Not all of those are arrests necessarily, but just in general, that's just kind of gives us a bit of a baseline as to what we're going to be speaking to specifically regarding use of force. This includes those that are subjects to complaints, those involved with motor vehicle collisions, witnesses, victims, all those types of things. Specifically with use of force, anytime we are using force as police, our authorities come from the provisions of the Criminal Code. Section 25 of the Criminal Code is what allows officers to use force. Whenever we are using force, there's going to be a various amount of factors that we kind of consider when we are doing it, and then kind of be broken down into officer, subject, and environmental factors. We use those factors specifically. There's a bunch of subcategories on how we kind of describe those, but when we're doing in-service training or training to new recruits, for example, like what we're doing right now, those are all things that we kind of touch on and train on to help allow members to be able to articulate and explain why we use the force we did in whatever the situation may be. So as far as record keeping, us as the members involved in the use, any type of use of force, we're responsible for submitting a use of force report. These can include something very minor in nature, all the way to the most extreme, such as like an officer-involved shooting or something along those lines. Whenever there is a use of force, despite however many members are involved, there could be 4 or 5 members involved. Whenever there is a use of force report, only one report will be submitted just for accurate record keeping. Just some definitions and terms, just as we it'll make more sense once we get into the overview. But a subject, when we refer to somebody as a subject, it's just that person that we're engaged with a use of force with. For minor injuries with no treatment, those are going to be described as like your just general, perhaps you took somebody down on the ground and they've got a bit of a scrape on their knee or elbow or something like that. Or potentially some bruising due to like a strike or some type of impact. If there is treatment required, that's going to be something where perhaps it's a strain or a sprain, something a little bit more than just your kind of general aches and pains or a scratch. A serious injury is one that's going to require any type of outpatient, so perhaps it's EMS attending to facilitate a transport to the hospital, or a break or something like that where they're going to need further assistance, further assistance at the hospital. And then when we describe empty hand techniques, those are options that don't include any type of weapons. So, for example, if we take somebody down, deliver a strike, kick, block, wrist kind of joint locks type things like that, those are kind of what we mean when we talk about empty hand techniques. So when we look at our kind of 3-year comparison here, you're going to kind of notice a few trends, specifically when we compare it to 2023 based on 2024. So right away out of the gates, you can see calls for service were higher by about 2,500. With that came a slight increase in arrests, which is generally to be expected. And kind of what the big one that we're going to see there is the difference in use of force reports. So last year, we went from 86 to 149. Now, that might be alarming, or that might be like, wow, what's the reasoning for such a drastic increase? Kind of how we break it down is, because when you go over the 3-year average, it's not as significant, but like I mentioned earlier, we are responsible for submitting all of our own use of force reports, and there's various criteria that we used to submit that use of force report. And I think historically, specifically last year, what we noticed was perhaps members weren't accurately submitting use of force reports, even in the most minor of natures, and that'll make more sense as we kind of continue on. So we see our subjects involved, obviously, has drastically increased, so up to 163. 26 of those subjects resulted in minor injuries with no treatment required. 8 of them required treatment, and we had 2 use of force incidents that resulted in serious injuries. As far as officers involved in injuries, 7 of those incidents resulted in 7 with no treatment, 1 required treatment, and 1 other was a serious injury. When we kind of break it down specifically into the types of force used, you can see 83 of those use of force incidents were those empty hand techniques that we were kind of describing earlier, obviously being our most common. 17 of those were with OCs, or pepper spray, more commonly known as. Only 1 of those incidents involved a baton, and 26 with a taser. Now, we'll address that a little bit later on when we kind of talk about our trends, but you can see that number's doubled in comparison to 2023, and I'll explain that later. Of those 26 incidents, however, I just want to point out only 22 of them were just the taser simply being displayed and not actually used or deployed. Continuing on, ARWIN was launched 3 times. So ARWIN is just another less lethal impact munition. A pepper ball was deployed 4 times. Again, that's another impact munition that has, the best way to describe it is it's very similar to like a paintball gun. Instead of paint, there's, it's called PAVA chemical inside. So 4 of those. And then carrying on into firearms being pointed or displayed, we had 41 incidents of that. Again, fairly significant increase from 2023. And then we had one incident last summer that resulted in a officer-involved shooting where the firearm was discharged. Just to get ahead of that, we're not going to be able to discuss, obviously, any of the specifics regarding that, just because the accused is still before the courts. But we did have an incident regarding that. So when we talk about trends and increase in numbers, like I said, I kind of addressed a little bit already, but when we try to evaluate, okay, why are we having more, or why has there been an increase? We evaluate in a few different factors. We have obviously an increased number of calls for service. We also had increased proactive measures where we had directed patrols of Mustard Seed area. We had additional downtown patrol unit shifts and overtime opportunities for members with more kind of increased proactive work. So again, perhaps that could be viewed as a reason for a bit of an increase. And then continued rise of addiction and mental health issues within our community, again, may just help explain some of those. So again, when I look at the numbers from 2024, I think that it more accurately represents what had actually happened based on previous years. So when we saw the 86 use of force reports from 2023, I think we recognized that perhaps members were forgetting what required use of force reports. So specifically with firearms and tasers. So we'll go back actually. So if you look at the list here, you see a double in taser usages and almost a double in firearm usages. What I think could be best described as happening was members were forgetting that just by simply having something out and displayed, despite it not being used, that still is considered a use of force, and a use of force report subsequently has to be submitted because we've presented that weapon system that's potentially helped de-escalate the situation and resolve the situation. So that alone right there, if we do the math, is responsible for close to 40 incidents and a change of 40 incidents in addition to kind of what we had. So that could be a reason, and we address that with some of our in-service training. Just reminding members when we do that training that this is the criteria, this is when we need to submit use of force reports, just so we're accurately capturing what those incidents are. So just a bit about kind of on the topic of training. So in service-wise, our control tactics team facilitates 2 8-hour days with all members of our operational staff. So this training can include tactical communications, de-escalation, it could be physical techniques, intermediate weapons. We do a lot of scenario training just to try to get that reality-based training as accurately as we can. It may include some safe restraint techniques as well. And then certainly within recruit training, which we're running a class right now, we're continuing to increase the focus on customer service, professionalism, all in the effort to try to remedy or mediate as much force used as possible. And again, with that, we're continuing to work with mental health awareness and training for officers to just allow us to appropriately handle and work through whatever situations kind of come our way. We saw a few slides earlier. Addiction and mental health is continuing to be on the rise, so we're trying to just keep our thumb on it and be up to date with what we need to be doing to try to continue to mitigate the problems as much as possible. One thing we're just going to touch on briefly is when we talk use of force and training our members, there's a model that we use to try to assist our members in articulating our use of force. And this model is kind of used as a bit of a guideline for members to use to assist with some of that articulation of force. So this model that you're going to see on your screen here, the reasonable offer response, is a the model that we've been using for quite some time. However, we're transitioning this year to a de-escalation framework. So it looks quite a bit different, but reality is it's very similar to what we've been doing. Just essentially de-escalations constantly through whatever interaction we're at, whether it be with a cooperative subject or an uncooperative subject that's wanting to potentially fight us. De-escalation is just present throughout, and it could change. It could go very high to very low very quickly. So this is just going to be a model that the province has kind of rolled out for all agencies to get on board with, and that we're kind of rolling out within our members this year, just to ensure that we're being, again, consistent with other services within the province. And de-escalation is obviously a big topic of police, law enforcement, when we're dealing with these situations. So when you look at the differences with them, though, compared to our old model, it is very similar. It's just reinforcing just that de-escalation is involved with every stage of our interactions with the public. Staff Holt?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. We decided to break this up into two parts. So as you know, Constable Weisgerber was going to talk to you about the actual use of force. And my purpose here is to talk to you a little bit about how that use of force ties into professional standards within the service. So my current role is the supervisor of admin services, and under that umbrella is professional standards unit, so I look after that unit as well. So I'm going to just explain a little bit of our process and how that ties in. So first of all, when we have a use of force report and it's completed, the first measure is that that use of force report gets submitted with the general occurrence report, and it's reviewed by the on-duty staff sergeant, whoever reads the report. If there's any issues or concerns with that use of force report, then that staff sergeant can identify those and talk to the member and figure out maybe what would happen if it's an issue with reporting or an issue with the use of force itself. The second measure is that the use of force report's then reviewed by a control tactics instructor, and the same measurement is applied. So the instructor reviews it for content and determines if there's maybe any issues or concerns with what's reported. And then finally, annually, we have the lead or the supervisor or control tactics unit that reviews all of them collectively, and it's for a different purpose, because at this point they've all been approved or any issues have been raised, but that member reviews them for looking at maybe trends or training things that need to occur if they see something or she sees something throughout the year. And then finally, we have the option where the Office of the Chief can request a separate review of a use of force in any incident that results in a serious injury, as Constable Weisgerber described earlier. So I'm going to talk a little bit about professional standards and how these stats kind of fit in with that area. So I've broken it up into 4 parts. The first part is public interactions. As Constable Weisgerber pointed out earlier, our best estimate is the Medicine officers come into contact with about 100,000 people throughout the 2024. And of those 100,000 encounters, 149 of those resulted in some type of use of force. And that resulted, if you look at percentage-wise, in about 0.15% of those encounters resulted in some type of use of force. When we look at further into the calls for service, in 2024 there was about 35,000 calls for service that officers attended to, and of those, 0.43% roughly resulted in some type of use of force. When we break it down further and look at arrests, there was about 2,710 arrests made in 2024. And if you compare that same 149 number of use of force reports, that results in about 5.5% of those arrests resulting in some type of use of force. And finally, if we look at the use of force complaints, so those are complaints where a member of the public has written in or provided a complaint to police regarding how they were treated in relation to a use of force. When we look at that number specifically, of the 149 in 2024, we only received 1 complaint of excessive force. So that equates to 0.67%. And additionally, I just want to point out in 2024, the Professional Standards Unit did conduct 1 inquiry and a review resulting from a person that had received a serious injury that was arrested. So the last part I want to talk to you a little bit about is how the Professional Standards Unit uses the use of force stats and the reports. So the 3 areas in which the stats are used really are to conduct oversight, accountability, and improvement. And the Professional Standards Unit uses the reports to review things of like relating to incident frequency, so how often the force is used and what circumstances. And secondly is the type of force used, so if things like less lethal munitions were used, were they used effectively and appropriately? And the last is body-worn camera analysis. If we're fortunate enough to have the incident captured on body-worn camera, it provides us the ability to see not only the use of force that was used, but the circumstances that occurred prior to the use of force and then after. So it's a nice ability to have that feature when we do have the incident captured on body-worn camera. My part was the short part, so we're going to open up to questions if you have any questions for Constable Weisgerber or myself.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Holt and Constable Weisgerber. Commission have questions? Commissioner Sir.
Just a question, maybe I missed it or didn't see it, but K-9, is that considered a use of force, or was it in the presentation here at all?
Yes, it is considered a use of force. It wasn't specific to the slide or the breakdown that we had there, but that is something we capture. So anytime K-9 is used, or TAC as well, our TAC team, anytime they are deployed or used within certain things, there are specific breakdowns within that as well that's captured within our use of force stats, yeah.
Because I imagine if it's like any weapon you're using against the bad guys, if they see the dog coming, that's a use of force, they're gonna...
100%, and those K-9 handlers are, obviously have more extensive training related to that specific use of force, just because we only have 2 handlers within our service, so that doesn't necessarily apply service-wide to some of the specific training they have, but for sure, it's a higher level use of force anytime you've got one of those fur missiles running after you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been here, but it seems to me in the past there were, excuse me, sorry, mental health professionals that worked alongside the patrol officers. So my question is that program still in effect? Is it being used? And how does that kind of intertwine with prevention and use of force?
Yeah, absolutely. We still work collaboratively with Alberta Health Services. So within our building, we have 2 mental health professionals that work alongside our police and crisis team. Actually, our second one just started this week, which is exciting. So I myself actually am involved from the patrol capacity with our police and crisis team. So essentially how that works is at any time that we're dealing with a mental health call, we may request them to come out. They may, in some circumstances, be riding with the patrol officer, or they just may be at the station doing some other follow-ups and work. But if we ever want a member from our PAC team to attend a call to deal specifically with somebody, just because they have a bit of a higher level of training to deal with, certain things, we're there to provide kind of the security and the safety to ensure the area or whatever that call is safe. But then we can have and request them to come to the scene, have them chat with them, and then make sure that they're getting connected to whatever resources or whatever that is that they need, whether it be addiction resources, the employment, whatever. They're able to kind of have a large umbrella that they can offer and get them connected to whoever it is that they need. Yeah.
Commissioner Johnson?
2 questions. Number 1, I'm amazed at the small number of altercations that there are. Good work. Also on your research, when you researched on, as we used to say, stop and get back, is that for all ranks? And do the senior ranks, do the senior ranks at any time have to take training? Do the plainclothes people have to take any of this? Do the officers have to? What do you focus on? How much training does everyone get?
Yeah, so despite you being in a plainclothes unit, they're still required to participate in whatever that biannual training is. So we have an 8-hour day both in the spring and fall. So yes, if you're a staff sergeant, or if you're a member within our, say, our organized crime unit or traffic or things of that nature, everybody is required to attend those days for certification. A couple reasons. Those members within those plainclothes units, for example, they still are carrying a firearm. they still are carrying other intermediate weapons. So certainly if we are doing training specific to those platforms, it's important that they're also being up to date with perhaps current trends and requalifications. For example, with the TASER, we have to recertify every 2 years. So if you are a member within those specialty units, there is still that requirement to go through and make sure that you're up to date and current with those requirements.
But you're saying the training ends at staff sergeant, so it doesn't include the officers,
Sorry, which officers?
the commissioned officers,
All police officers, like all police officers, yeah.
the officers?
Oh, sorry. No, not specifically to them, for control tactics wise anyways. Yeah.
Commissioner Keen?
Thank you for the presentation, greatly appreciated. And for the stats, I know that for us as commissioners, statistics help us a lot in seeing the bigger picture. I appreciate the kind of the background, because when you hear that jump from 2023 to 2024, it's kind of like, well, that seems a little significant. But obviously, you had mentioned that there was some reminders and through training, I guess, to officers that when they're required to fill those reports out. And I guess we'll see next year how that looks, compared to 2024 and beyond that as well. So I appreciate that. Just wondering if you know how we compare to any other services.
That's a good question. I'm not certain exactly how we would compare to other services. You would have to try to, I guess, evaluate it based on per capita and kind of what that average is. That's a great question. I may liaise. We work closely with Lethbridge lots, so I might actually inquire because I'm interested in that myself. But yeah, maybe I'll look into that and I'll report back in 2026 with a fancy new slide describing how we compare. But yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kuchinwara?
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much again, guys. It's kind of eye-opening. I was just wondering, when you talk about de-escalation, is it a requirement then for the officers that are out there doing it to wear the body cameras? Because that will probably help or something, or make sure that the reports are.
So you're saying like with body cameras?
Is it a requirement? Is it mandatory?
So it hasn't yet become where body cameras are a requirement for everybody. Just I think maybe the office of the chief can speak to that more specifically. But I think there's a cost that comes with having everybody outfitted with the body camera. So as is now, we're, I would say on average 2 to 3 members per patrol team. We might actually be a little bit higher than that now. That wear the body cam. And then certainly it's the expectation that if you are entering a situation that you may suspect, because there's times we know that perhaps something may go down a certain path. So if there's a way that we can ensure that there is a body cam present to capture whatever is happening, we'll go through, make sure that we're doing that to try to capture it, because it's great for us too. I know as a member, as a police officer that's in those situations, a lot of people think that they're scary and this and that, but in reality, they actually they support us and they help capture exactly what's happening. So, yeah, I mean, simply the presence of a body camera, does that help de-escalate the situation? Perhaps, if somebody sees that, then maybe they realize that, hey, I'm being recorded and I can't get away with something. But at the very least, you're there to kind of capture the totality of the circumstances.
Thank you so much. I mean, you've summarized it because it can work both ways, protects you, and then might also help to de-escalate the situation, especially to protect you as well, because it's complete evidence, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Dubnowski.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. I guess the question, Commissioner Keen kind of took the question, or part of the question I had was around statistical proportional evaluations against other services. Albeit it'd be difficult to compare ourselves to the bigger centers, even on a proportional basis, but it is an interesting question. But my question through yourself or to the chief would be around the reporting. So obviously we're very transparent as a service, as all services I imagine are required and want to. I'll even go that far. in the form of presenting of these kinds of statistics, et cetera. But what is our, is there ever a time or a place where this SolGen would require a follow-up or would intervene in some capacity, not intervene in the form of an investigation or if there were, a complaint that came out of it, but does the province or does SolGen play any role vis-a-vis our reporting, if any?
Councillor, I can take that, and if Councilor Weisgerber has something to jump in on. So in matters that, if something serious happens, like an officer-involved shooting, that's one of the mandates for the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ASIRT as it's known. So as per Section 46(1) of the Police Act, when there's a serious matter, or it doesn't have to be an officer-involved shooting, it can be a shooting, but if there's a serious injury, or something that's deemed serious that the police are involved in, I do a notification to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services through Section 46(1). The minister causes it to be forwarded to the Executive Director of ASIRT, and then they determine if they're going to come and investigate that. They have the right to do that if they choose. If they choose, they come and investigate it and they take care of it. Sometimes they will ask us to look into that internally through professional standards, and we'll do so and report back to them. So both things can happen, but there is a reporting mechanism to the province for serious matters.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me about ASIRT and its role in this. My question maybe to the members then would be, you had mentioned that each time there's an incident that the staff sergeant on duty would review it, and perhaps, I think you mentioned someone else. I guess my question would be, is there ever an opportunity, or do you take the opportunity to take that incident and unpack it a little bit, do a mini postmortem, and bring that back to the I guess you don't call them platoons, complements? What do you call your crews of, they're not patrol teams. Do you ever bring that back and kind of unpack it so that you have an opportunity not just as a member to learn or adjudicate what went well, what didn't go well, but a bigger group and in a trusted fashion, because being vulnerable in that fashion around what steps were taken or could have been taken to de-escalate versus assert themselves with the tools, whether it be open-handed combat or an escalation with the necessity of other tools. But is there a chance to do that on a larger scale so that there's learning from each other in a very safe and healthy way?
Yeah, absolutely. We look at doing that all the time. So when I review each use of force report, I try to identify exactly kind of what the trends are, or if there's more of a singular incident. For example, we've taught our members a way of taking somebody to the ground safely that's in handcuffs. So that may sound fairly simple. Well, you take him down to the ground, but when somebody's in handcuffs, they don't have the ability to necessarily protect themselves. So how do we do that safely? And that stemmed from kind of one singular incident itself. So we're constantly trying to evaluate, and if we recognize that something may happen that we haven't maybe highlighted or been exposed to before, so if we can get ahead of it so we can roll that out to our membership so it doesn't happen again, or provide, we're also constantly evaluating what happens even outside externally. So certainly internal-wise, we actually will use body cams lots of times to use that information to capture it to roll out what we would do differently. And then externally, if we're recognizing trends and things that have happened with other agencies, how can we break that down, debrief it, and ensure that doesn't happen within our service? So, for example, we just did that with the recruits. I don't know if anybody saw what happened in Waterloo, but in Ontario. But we will use situations even externally, watch the video because we have great body cam and everybody's got a cell phone now. So we'll watch that video, we'll break it down, discuss it amongst our members, and kind of talk about what would we do in this situation and what else could we have done so perhaps we get a more desirable outcome. So that's something we're constantly doing. And unfortunately, it's great that we get 2 days every year Sometimes those days are jam-packed because we might compile a bit of a handful of stuff that we want to address or bring up with our members. But that's something we're doing constantly. Every year, we're going to bring up a different topic, or if we may see certain trends and try to address it, get ahead of it, so we're mitigating kind of maybe certain outcomes with us as well. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Chief, anything to add?
I just want to say thanks to Austin and Chad for the great work, and it's great work that goes on all year long with the control tactics training and the professional standards investigations, the work being done. So thanks for the work you do, and thanks for putting this together, because I think it's important for the commission and for our citizens to see and hear about the work that gets done and how it gets compiled here. So thanks very much and great job. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, police budget update. Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned earlier in the closed session, so we had a negative variance for the closing out the 2024 budget year, and the big driver in that was the benefit rate. We've since corrected that with the city for the next budget cycle of 25-26, so it's right-sized for historically what our budget rates are reporting as. So that was good news for us, but happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for the chief? Seeing none, we will move on to the AAPG report. Commissioner Johnson.
Really short. I have been onboarded and everything on the, for the board. So if anyone has any questions that you want taken up the line to AAPG, let me know. Our next meeting is on the 21st, unless it's canceled, and I guess I'll find that out tomorrow.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson. Item number 8, the Office of the Chief report.
I'll turn it over, Mr. Chair, to Inspector Graham for operational services.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Chair, good evening, Commission members. I'm going to bring up 2 items from January I want to highlight from the patrol section. On the evening of January 1st, patrol members responded to a break and enter in progress on a commercial property up in Briar Park Road. Utilizing the drone, officers were able to identify an individual in the vicinity, and a K-9 team was then brought in and tracked that individual from the scene to where he was eventually apprehended. Further investigation revealed at that time that the suspect was also responsible for a number of other break-and-enters in the same area on the same evening. I'll move forward to January 21st, early morning hours. Patrol members responded to a robbery involving a firearm in the 400 block of 5th Street Southeast. After obtaining a description of the suspect, officers observed a man leaving the scene on foot. He was quickly apprehended, and a subsequent search of the area near the suspect uncovered a black CO2 pellet pistol. Through the investigation, police determined that the suspect had approached the victim, pointed the imitation firearm at him, and demanded money. The suspect was a 38-year-old Medicine resident, and he was charged accordingly with robbery and using an intimidation firearm to commit an indictable offense. That's it from the operations side. I'm glad to take any questions.
Any questions from the Commission? None, thank you. Moving on.
Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to Inspector West with investigation and support services, please.
Thank you, Chief. Just a few things, just on page 13 with regard to the criminal investigation section, our major crimes unit. On January 14th, patrols responded to a robbery with violence at a commercial property in the southwest, 16th Street Southwest area. An offender, quite a violent offense, an offender had forcefully entered the premise, stole cash, and threatened staff there with a weapon. So patrols initiated the investigation, of course, and called in major crimes. As we talked about before, they have the the time to really dig into some of these files, especially when there's violence involved like this. As a result of their work in partnership with patrols, a 33-year-old Medicine resident was arrested and charged with multiple offenses, including robbery, possession of a weapon, dangerous public peace, using a disguise with intent. So that is a separate criminal code charge that's an aggravating factor in these types of offenses. When you commit a criminal offense and wear a disguise, it's actually an offense on its own merit. Possession of stolen property, and this male was from Calgary and had a number of outstanding warrants. So a really great example of the coordination and partnership between patrols and our willingness of the major crime section to pitch in on files like that and really dig in. Just moving on to the administrative services section and the training unit. So this last month, the Medicine Police Service hosted a police casualty care training course for 6 instructors who will train operational police officers with advanced emergency first aid skills. So officers get the regular first aid that, you know, we all get. Casualty care is the next level. And so this would be for, you know, serious wounds, bleeds, that type of things, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, to not only look after themselves, but look after others. And there's some lots of examples where we've throughout the province where officers have used things such as tourniquets, pressure bandages to really help save people's lives. So we're hoping to roll that out later on this year to the rest of the rank and file. We're just sort of fine tuning the program, so that's exciting and very well received by the rank and file. And then just on the following page, on page 16, I talked a little bit about it, but officially on January 13th, we had 5 new recruits begin their full-time in-service training with the Medicine Police. And of course, we've got our 4 MHPS members and 1 Blood Tribe member, and they're well into their training course now, and it's just exciting to have that program kicked off and running within the service. And that's all I have from support services.
Any questions? Commissioner Hurst?
Thanks. Through the chair, you'd mentioned the recruitment training, and I guess just looking for early indications. This is the first go-round with Medicine Hat College. Is this where they're having it at?
Yes. Yeah.
So any early indications of just the feedback gained on now Medicine Hat College doing the training?
Yeah, it's been a total game changer. So the Medicine Hat College has been an absolute great partner. We've been able to customize this while, you know, maintaining the standards that we have to follow. We've really been able to customize some of the things to the Medicine Hat Police Service. Another thing we've done is we have formerly sort of one of the mainstay courses is the criminal law course. I can't remember how many hours it is, but it's a good portion of the course. In the past, because of our former partner, I think there was a bit of a sort of an academic type of course that was being offered, something that you would get in college in, you know, a law enforcement program or a criminology program, whereas we've been able to take a more law enforcement pragmatic tact on that. So it's a lot more to the point. It's a lot more useful. It's a lot more geared to using the criminal code and understanding the criminal code rather than, you know, studying its history and those types of things. So that's been a game changer. And like I say, we've had one of the staff members from the Medicine Hat College has been hand in hand with us the whole time. And we're just really pleased with the program so far. It's also allowed us access to the facilities at the college. For example, when we delivered our Indigenous training, we did it at their facility. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of the room they have there, but all that training took place there. We had the elders come in, and it's just been a really positive experience so far. We're very happy with it.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Inspector. I just noticed under the major crimes unit, in going through the report on January 22nd, there were males charged with sexual exploitation, child luring, possession of child pornography, and some other offenses. And I can't say that I've seen that or heard about that much in Medicinet, and maybe it's just because it's, doesn't make its way to a report. But I'm just wondering, is that something that happens very often in our community? Or?
It's hard to say how much it's happening. Oftentimes, these types of things go unreported. Victims may not consider themselves victims, though they are, or they don't feel empowered to call the police. So they're very sensitive files. It was some great work was done on this particular one. To answer your question, they're not very frequent within the section, but we really don't have a real understanding of how much this sort of activity is taking place.
Thank you.
Chief, on with your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to report to the commission and to any citizens that are watching or listening. We've engaged with the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education. So dating back to the spring of 2024, we were approached by the Catholic School Board if we'd be interested in participating in an academy program that they had an idea to run. And it'd be the first of its kind in Alberta. And it's the First Responders Academy they'd run at Monsignor McCoy High School. So the idea being that in the fall of 2025, how it's going to roll out. So it's a partnership between the Catholic Board of Education, the Medicine Hat Police Service, and the Medicine Hat Fire and Emergency Services. We're going to partner with them and do a First Responder Academy for grades, I believe 11 students, or maybe 12 this year, and then 11, 12 the year after. The idea being it'll provide information for students that might have interesting careers as first responders to give them an idea of what they're getting themselves into, and then they may go on to Medicine Hat College from there into the criminal justice program or to a fire emergency service academy. So it's a great idea. I wish we could take credit for it, but the Catholic School Board gets all the credit for coming up with the idea. And there's some funding available through the, I believe, provincial ministries for education for some of this. So an exciting program. We're just still building it out right now, but you'll see that unfold in the fall of 2025 for interested students at Monsignor McCoy High School. So we'll report back once it's running and how it's running, but full credit to the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education for coming up with the idea. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Any questions for the chief? Seeing none, anything else?
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So moving on to 9, new business. The Alberta Association of Police Governance Annual Conference and AGM is on May 2nd and 3rd in Westlock. If any commissioners would like to attend, we need to approve registration and travel. Is anybody planning to attend the conference on May 2nd and 3rd? Greg? Yep. Miles?
However, I think is not mine paid for by the AAPG?
It should be, correct.
Thanks.
Yep. Anina, you planning to go? Okay. Eleanor? Anybody else? No? 1, 2, 3, 4? No, 4, 3. So we need a motion to approve registration and travel for 3 commissioners to attend. If someone would so make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Hirsch. Seconder. Commissioner Thorson, thank you. Any other discussion? Yes?
I just appreciate people that have the time to attend, and I think 3 is a very healthy number from us, so I think it's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. So we'll call for the vote then. Anybody abstained? Opposed? That motion is carried. Please make sure you let Melanie know so she can get you registered and everything for that. And Miles, let us know if anything is wrong about that, but I think you're right. Okay, additionally, we have, the AAPG has called for nominations to a special purpose committee. We received 2 interested parties, Anina and Miles, have both put their names forward. So the commission needs to approve their nominations. The paperwork was due on Friday, so we submitted it with a request to get an extension for the approval from commission. We'll put both names forward. We don't get to decide who, that's up to them, but we'll put both names forward. So a motion to approve both Anina and Miles going forward to the Special Purpose Committee.
So moved.
Greg, thank you. And seconder? Was Junowski, thank you. Any abstained? Opposed? Carried, thank you. We'll now move on to community consultation. Before we do that, I will just read this. We are now going to move into the public consultation portion of the meeting. Is there any member of the public that is present, aside from official media, who would like to pose a question or provide a comment to the commission? If yes, before we open this session, we would ask that you kindly respect the following guidelines. Please note that complaints about officer conduct or MHPS policies and any details concerning ongoing investigations or personnel matters are not topics for this forum, as per the provisions set out in the Alberta Police Act. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to present your comments and questions, which will be directed to the chair. The chair may in turn ask the members of the police service to respond if appropriate. If the above guidelines are acceptable to you, please we now ask you to approach the podium.
Before I begin, I want to state I'm experiencing PTSD symptoms stemming from events that you all know about. I may pass my neighbor to someone else to read for me. If I get too emotional at that time, is mine, not theirs. If they want to speak later, I don't want their time to be detracted. Those of you who don't know me, yes, I am professional media. I am Kelly Allard. I'm an investigative journalist with Community TV, the Medicine Hat Owl. I'm credited media with both the Alberta Court of Justice and the Court of King's Bench, which gives us the special privilege of recording but not broadcasting court proceedings. There's 8 journalists from Medicine Hat on the accredited media list. The TV station has 1. Newspaper has 2. Medicine Hat Owl, we have 5. 3 of them are women. Your purpose, the MHPC, is to make sure that the police chief does his job. The MHPS has embarked on a new cadet training program, which makes it absolutely imperative that the top brass knows proper police procedures. This includes protecting charter rights. The Constitution Act, which includes charter rights and freedom, says the Constitution of Canada is the supreme law of Canada, and any law that is inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution is, to the extent of the inconsistency, of no force or effect. I'm very concerned with the violation of our charter right to a free press by the police in the city. The MHPC will be negligent if they do not address this issue of the police violating the right to a free press. 9 months ago, an MHPS officer ordered me to leave these very chambers for the offense of observing my charter right of recording public proceedings. I didn't file a complaint then, as I thought it was a one-off. I did not want to cause trouble for an otherwise good cop because of what I consider to be a lapse in judgment. On October 8th, and I'm not trying to get into the complaint, I'm just trying to relate some relevant issues. It was a meeting at the police station with representatives from Mustard Seat and Unhappy Flats resident. I watched in shock and horror as 3 officers in the presence of our chief physically removed a journalist from a public event, causing bodily harm in the process. I then realized that it was not a one-off. The top brass set the tone. I have police officers in my family, not anywhere nearby, so don't bother trying to find out where they are. I sent one of them the recordings taken on October 8th and asked them what they thought about it. And this comes from a seasoned officer, not a new recruit. There should be 100% transparency for meetings such as that. You can't allow someone to record and then make them stop because the meeting isn't going as you planned. Watching my coworker be abused by police officers while he was doing his job caused harm to me and probably harm to some of the other 30 people in that room. I now experience PTSD symptoms when I see a police officer, especially when I see the officers involved. One of them is sitting at the horseshoe right now. Another one is a chief who did nothing to stop it. I did not have my family standing beside me. I would not be able to speak right now. Every time I see police officers in an event, I'm wondering, and an event for a story I'm covering, I wonder, are they going to interfere with my job? When they interfere with my job, how much are they going to hurt me? No, I'm not asking if they're going to hurt me. I'm asking how much they're going to do it. There was an incident this last weekend out in Red Cliff, where my coworker, he was filming a promo, and someone saw him with a camera, and they went nuts. They thought he was filming in public. They thought they had the right to tell him to stop filming. They thought they had the right to tell him to erase that from his phone. And okay, so yeah, he's outside, he's filming, and then these 2 large men start chasing him into the building. Because they thought they had the right to tell him to stop filming in public. Another example is this meeting right here. It's being streamed, but the charter guarantees my right to record and to take photos. Official recordings do not tell the whole story. That is what media is for. So I got a few questions. I'll ask my questions and then. I want the MHPC to do its job and ensure that our charter rights are protected by the MHPS. I want to know how are you going to do that? Number two, I want to see a PR campaign informing the public about the legality of filming in public, stressing the fact that we do not need permission to record in public. Are you willing to do this? I mean, I can do a video right now, we can get it out to our tens of thousands of viewers. I want to know that when our 5 journalists, 3 of them being female, are out doing their jobs, they will not be assaulted by police. When will the police get that training? Here's a final quote by my family member, who's an officer. Without the general public questioning the actions of police, the bad ones can never be held accountable. And nobody hates a shitty, power-hungry cop more than a cop. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Ellard. We're going to receive them as presented. The majority of what you said is directly related to your complaint. That was not an appropriate form for us to receive that from you. So we'll take the other things that you asked us under consideration, and we'll do our very best to get back to you. Thank you. The next open meeting is on March 19th. Is that right? 19th? Thank you. And the following one on April 16th. Can I have someone move to adjourn? Vice Chair Keane, thank you very much.